go ahead and get this class on the road here. I hope you all had a good break, good couple weeks off of class, some good holidays, and Happy New Year. Just a couple of things to stay on your radar before we get too deep into this. Assignment-wise, I don't think there was anything due today, was there? I don't think there was, but there are more assignments coming, I assure you of that. Canvas, I believe, is in fact up to date, so make sure you're keeping up with that, keeping an eye on that. Today is actually going to be the last day that I will be here, so I have to go back to my day job on campus next week. I actually have a class right at this time, so unfortunately I have to go back to do that, but I know I haven't been here very long, but it's been a pleasure, wonderful meeting all of you, working with all of you, and you're going to be in good hands for the rest of the way, I can assure you of that. So yeah, I think that's all I've got announcement-wise. Any questions about the calendar or logistics? I know it's Monday, I know we've just had a couple weeks off. Anybody need a refresher? Yeah.
Two elements of the room. One, February 6th, no longer on the schedule, so I wonder what's going on with that. Second of all, do you know what day we're graduating?
Those are both great questions for Nick. I don't know where Nick is, but he is the guy who knows the answers to those questions. Yeah. I actually would like to know the answer to the second one because I wouldn't mind showing up to graduation myself. But as far as February 6th, that's probably just an oversight. I'm sure somebody will notice that sooner or later and get it fixed. Yeah. Any other scheduling logistical questions before we hop into the review for today and do some coding? All right, fantastic. So the topics on the agenda for today, there were two topics. We had some prep work relating to validation, validating the contents of your model, and then also relating to enums, enumerations. I want to talk about both of those. We might do an exercise for both of those as well. So let's talk about validation. So validation actually has effects on all of the parts of our applications, the models, the views, and the controllers. And I kind of want to start with a little conversation about that. I am, yes. First off, let's start with the model. If I want to validate my model, right, what does that mean? What effect is that going to have on the code of my model? What am I going to start to see show up in my model if I'm doing validations? Yeah. Messages. So messages will occur when things go wrong, right? Where do we find those messages in the code? Those messages are part of, I'm sorry? Part of the fields? Is that what you said? Well, we'll talk about the controller. I'm interested in the model specifically. What do I see in the model that lets me know I'm doing validations? What part of the model is related to validation? Annotations, that's what I was looking for, yeah. There's annotations. Annotations. How do I know it's an annotation? The @ sign out front tells me that it's an annotation. Annotations are not just for validation, right? In fact, I think we've seen annotations elsewhere already, especially in the controller class for things like setting up routes. So annotations are not just for validation, but that is how validations are set up in our model, is using annotations. And there's different kinds of annotations for the types of validations that we want to apply to our model. So we can specify, well, you should tell me, what are some annotations, what are some types of validations we can do with these annotations? I'm sorry? Error? So errors we'll talk about in a little bit. The annotations are actually specifying, though, what the validation is doing for us. Yeah. Size, yeah, size is a very common one. What size strings oftentimes do I want to allow? Yeah. What else? Yeah. Email is another common one. Emails are an email address is surprisingly complex. I don't know how many of you have ever thought about it. Not many people do, myself included. But if you think about how to verify whether something is actually an email or not, it's surprisingly complex. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. We slap the email validation onto anything that we expect to be an email, and it takes care of that for us. Any other ones? I'm sorry? Not null, yeah, another common one. In fact, there's some documentation that I meant to pull up, and I forgot to do that before class, with a whole list of different validations that you can apply, right? And so if validation is something that you're interested in, having that documentation up is going to be extremely valuable, and I'll probably have to look it up here when we get to the exercise in just a little bit. So that's on the model side. The model side, we just tell it what kinds of data we're accepting for the given fields of our model. Let's talk about the controller, or no, let's actually skip the controller. Let's talk about the view next. What needs to happen with the view if I'm performing validation? What would I expect to see in my view? So my view class is what? What do I find in my view class? Find things like HTML, forms, stuff like that. So how do we apply validation to the view? Yeah?
Adding the color of the error to the CSS model, or talking about the error message in the table.
So we need to have a place for the error messages. That's right. Yep. We need to have a place for the error messages to be displayed if validation fails for whatever reason. How do we even apply the validation in the first place? How does it know that the stuff that I type into this box has to be an email address? How does it know that? How does it get that information? The answer is actually on the slide. TH field is the magic key to this. So we pass in an object to our view when we render it. That object is going to have fields, and we will use the TH field class to match the fields of my object to the components of my HTML form. This actually has a name. Does anybody know what it's called when I take fields from an object and attach them to a form? I don't know if this was mentioned in the prep work or not, but it's a good thing for you to know. It's called binding, model binding, binding a model to a form, specifying which fields from my model apply to which parts of my form. And they may not all match up, right? There might be fields in my model that aren't on the form. There might be stuff on the form that's not in my model. Those are all things that can happen, and that's okay. That's all right. But in terms of validation, the validation will not happen if I do not have that field applied to some part of my form. That's what makes the validation happen, at least in the Spring framework. And then the controller. What's the role of the controller now? What does the controller need to do for us if we're worried about validation? Yeah.
We put the min and max required for a field, or what the method was for.
That would actually be in the model. That would actually be the annotations for the model. So the role of the controller then is to decide, based on the information that somebody has typed in, what should happen next, right? So in this case, we're interested in validation. So think there's really two things that could happen if we really want to try to simplify it. Either everything they typed into the form is exactly good, everything is fine, or something they typed into the form does not pass validation, right? Those are the two situations that we are concerned about right now in regards to the controller. So if everything's fine, there's not much we have to do for that part. Just send them wherever they want to go, right? That's stuff that you've talked about in prior classes. You can redirect them, you can do whatever you need to do. If validation fails, that's what we're interested in today. What happens if they type in an email address that isn't valid? They forgot the @ sign or whatever is the case. What is the controller going to do to detect that situation, and what is it going to do in response to that situation? What code am I going to see in the controller class that helps me out with that? Anybody remember? I'm sorry? If errors, yeah. So we have another object, an errors object, right? that tracks all of the errors from validation, and then we can simply ask it, were there any validation errors? If there were validation errors, then we'll send them back to the form, right? We'll display the error messages, we'll send them back to the form, and they'll hopefully type in better stuff next time. That's the goal of the controller in all of this. So the reason why I wanted to go through all three of these parts is because validation is actually a good example of seeing the separation of concerns in action. The model is concerned with what data am I storing, and is that data valid? Is that data, operational, functional data for my application? The view is display. So the view is simply displaying, in this case, the form, so that somebody can type in data that will hopefully eventually get passed to the model. And the controller then is in charge of deciding what happens next. They typed this information in. What should I do? What should I do next? Oh, it's invalid? Then I'm going to send you back to the form, ask you to type in it again, and hopefully you'll give me better data next time. So we can clearly see the role of all three of those pieces, the model, the view, and the controller, through this act of validation. Are there any questions about that? Yes?
So about annotations, are these annotations, they are only specific, or?
That's a good question. So it could be a little of both. I think in this particular situation, the validation annotations, which I can look up here real quick. I wanted to have this page up anyway. Shoot. It's in the Java, is it in the Java X line? I had it up and then I closed the tab. I didn't mean to do that. Let me see if I can pull the tab up again real quick. Sorry. But to answer your question, the annotations can come from Java. They can also come from Spring if I'm using any other Java libraries, right? An annotation is something that as a programmer we can create ourselves if we want to, and other programmers have decided that that's a useful thing to do. So the people who make Spring, for example, provide annotations to do things that will be useful for Spring applications. Java provides a set of annotations that are considered, generally useful across many different types of Java applications. And so determining where they come from, though, and am I looking at the wrong class? So I clicked the wrong tab, sorry. I'm trying to talk and navigate the internet at the same time. And so, determining where that stuff comes from can be important. This is it. I know right where the link is in the prep, if I can get there. Here we go. This was the link that I wanted to have up. And so you can see here, actually, I can tell based on what website we're on, Java EE, or actually the package, Java X. Or another way of thinking about it is, I don't see the word Spring appear anywhere in this package name, right? These are not Spring-based annotations. But other annotations that I know that you've seen and used, like the stuff for routing, those are from Spring. So if I pull up like this, the mapping, request mapping, these kinds of annotations, those definitely are from Spring, absolutely. So we're really getting a combination. Some of them are from Java, some of them are from Spring. And like I said, if you ever want to create your own annotations, that's something that you can do as well. That is possible. Great question. Any other questions before we hop into some coding exercises? How are we doing? Okay, perfect. There were 2 exercises as part of the prep work today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at those or how far you got with them, but I wanted to take a look at both with the time that we have. Neither of them are terribly long, so I thought this would be a good way to review these concepts and get into a little bit more detail on how validation and enumeration. Oh, actually, I forgot to ask about enumerations. I'm sorry. I almost forgot. Let's talk about enumerations real quick before we do the exercises. What is an enum? It's short for enumeration, which is kind of a clue, although enumeration is not a word that I expect people to use on a daily basis. So what is an enum? What does it do? If somebody who doesn't know much about coding, for whatever reason, wanted to understand what enums were, how would you describe it to them? Yeah. Constant variable. So that word constant, I think, is an interesting choice. Yeah, I think it's a good choice. We've seen enums used to represent types of things in a lot of cases, right? So types of events, I think, was what you saw in the prep work. We're going to take a look at an exercise where we use enums to represent planets. I think there was something in the prep work about days of the week, right? If you notice, there's something that all three of those things actually have in common, which I know is a pretty bold statement to say, right? There's a finite number of them, right? There's a distinct number of days of the week. It's been 7 for as long as I can remember, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, right? The number of planets actually did change in my lifetime for whatever reason, but again, seems relatively stable, right? Doesn't seem like the number of planets is going to change anytime soon. Maybe plus or minus 1. Maybe Neptune's next on the chopping block. I don't know. But relatively stable in terms of how many of them there are. Even if it does change, it's not going to change a lot. There's not just going to magically be 1,000 more planets that we in our solar system tomorrow. There might be 1, right? And so enums are good when you've got a clearly defined set of something. I've got this many planets. I can enumerate them. The act of enumeration is literally assigning a number to each one of those values. But why? Why do we bother? Can I talk about the days of the week without bringing numbers into it? Like I can tell you what day of the week it is, and math doesn't have to enter the equation at all, right? It's not necessary. But in coding, that can be a useful thing to do. Why? Why can that be a useful thing? How do computers see the world? Does the computer know that it's Monday today? It kind of does, right? The clock tells me that it's Monday, but does it really know what that means? Like, does it know the implications of the fact that it's Monday? No, not necessarily. Does the computer know that we're on the planet Earth? Like, no, not really. But a computer can represent the days of the week. A computer doesn't think of today as Saturday necessarily. It thinks of it as, what, the 6th day of the year? Or whatever day of the century or the millennium. In other words, computers really like numbers. They really see the world as a series of ones and zeros, as a series of numbers. Is it easier to compare 2 numbers on the computer or 2 words? What do you think? Numbers. Absolutely easier to compare numbers. So when we enumerate something like the days of the week, we're really trying to meet the computer halfway. We're acknowledging the fact that as humans, we use words to convey meaning. The computer doesn't necessarily care about the words. The computer really likes to see everything as a number. So we're going to have our human words. We're going to assign numbers to all of them. That makes the computer happy. That lets us say something like Saturday. And we know what that means, but the computer looks at Saturday and sees 7, right? And so it can do its thing with numbers, and we can do our thing with words. Does that kind of make sense? That's why enumerations are powerful. It also limits us to that set. So if I define an enumeration with the 7 days of the week, and I invent an 8th day of the week, the computer is going to be like, well, you told me there was only 7, so I'm going to reject your 8th day of the week. It does not exist. So it holds us to those proper limitations, keeps unexpected values from creeping into our definitions. So that's why enums exist. That's why we use them. So all that being said, what do we expect to find in an enum? In the simplest case, if we just think of it as a very, very, very simple case, no extra bells and whistles, what do I see if I was creating an enum for days of the week? What would I see? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It'd be a class. It'd say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Saturday. That's it. That's the bare minimum that you need to create an enum. That is the absolute bare minimum that you need to create an enumeration. A list of words. The computer will automatically assign numbers to those words, and then I can use them in my code however I want to. We can add additional things to our enumerations, though, if we want to. So we can add additional properties. They're classes just like anything else. So I can add fields, I can have getters and setters, I can have constructors, I can have the whole deal. And when I think about enumerations like that, what it's really doing is it's limiting the number of objects I can create of that type. If I have a days of the week enumeration, there are exactly 7 of those types of objects that I can create, period. Contrast that to a class that represents, events. How many possible events are there? Infinite, right? There will be events from now until the end of time, right? There's an infinite number of events, so I can have as many event objects as I want. But for days of the week, there are only 7. I got to pick which ones I need. Does that make sense? Hopefully. We'll do an exercise about enums that will hopefully make these concepts a little bit more clear as well. Are there any questions about that before we hop into the exercises? Okay. Let's do the validation exercise, and then we'll spend some time on the enum exercise as well. Hopefully you at least got a chance to take a look at this exercise, but even if you didn't, it's not very long, so we'll be able to cover most of it, I think. It does require the events project. And so I've got that loaded up already. In fact, I've already got it running on my computer. And so this is what the prep work had you looking at, right? If I have a form here and I type some information into this form, oh, it's already got autofill. Oh, shoot, now my email is going to be on YouTube. Pizza party. Oh, yeah. And it worked because I typed in good data, right? I typed in my name, I typed in a good description, and I typed in a valid email address. But if I come back and I mess up my email address, take the back half of it off, it tells me invalid email, right? That's what you all did through the prep work. So this is the starting point for today. And this exercise just has us add a few additional things onto our events and try out some different validations that weren't necessarily covered in today's prep work. So if we want to do a little bit of a code review before we hop in and start changing everything around, if I look at the event class, which is our, which part of the application is the event class? Is it the M, the V, or the C? It's the model, that's right. I can see the annotations here for the different validations being performed. So the one that I just screwed up is this one, right? Invalid email. So you can see there's an email annotation, not blank, size for the description, right? 500 characters. Okay. So these already exist, and we're just going to add a few more. We're going to add a few more in just a moment. But before we do that, let's take a look at the other pieces as well. Just do a little bit of a tour/review of this before we start adding more stuff into it. If I go take a look at the form for creating events, you can see that for each one of these boxes in my form, I've got a th field tag associated with it, right? This one is for the name, this one is for the description, and this one is for the email. So that's what connects my object to my template. That's what connects the event object to the template. And then finally on the controller side, if we look up our event controller and take a look at processing this form, you can see, so we've got more annotations, model attributes. What does this do? At valid? If I take this off, what would happen? It tries to create an instance of the event class with the data that was typed into the form. That's exactly correct. If I take that valid annotation off, what effect does that have? If I remove that annotation? It's not going to do the validation anymore. It's not going to run the validation anymore. That annotation is saying, oh, hey, there's some validation annotations in this class that you should run on the data that you got from the form. That's what this annotation is saying. It's saying, oh, hey, I'm running validation on this object. You should go check the event model, see what validations are here, and apply that to the form. That's what that annotation is doing for us. And then here is the errors object that we talked about. So the controller now has those two situations. If there are errors, then send them back. Send them back to the form. Tell them what the problem was, and hopefully they'll type in something better this time. If there weren't any errors, then we'll just add the new event and move on with our day. Right? Nothing we need to do. So those are all the pieces for validation. Let's add a couple other things to it based on this exercise. All right. So these are some questions that we'll ask in just a second. The first thing, we're going to add a field to collect information about where the event will take place. So the first thing is, what are we going to call this? We're looking for where the event's going to take place. What are we going to call it, and what type should it be? If I want to have something for where the event's going to happen, how does that affect my model? What type should it be, and what should we call it? Yeah. We should call it location. I think that's good. What type should it be? String seems reasonable to me. All right. We now have a field for location. Do we need accessors for this field? What do we think? There's not one correct answer to this question, I feel like, right? This isn't a question that just has a very clear yes or no answer. This is a question that depends a lot on what we intend to do with this information later on in our application. So, you can see that we have accessors for a lot of the fields here. I think you could make an argument that having accessors for location would be useful if I want to display that location information, which honestly seems like a good idea to me, right? I didn't tell you where my pizza party was, so I'm just going to be sitting there at Emo's by myself with 20 pizzas, really regretting what I did in life to get myself to that point. So, having that information accessible seems good. Letting people know where the location is seems like a good idea. Making accessors for that field seems like a reasonable thing to do. What type of input are we going to use on our form? Well, that's, I think, pretty straightforward, right? We can go do that now. What do I need to do on my form? I need to create another type of... Actually, you can see I can probably just copy one of these, right? And change the... Whoa, shoot. Sorry. I hit the wrong button. I can probably just copy one of these existing boxes, right? And change the appropriate information. Location, event.location, event.location. Any other ones that I need to switch out? I don't think so. we've created another text box for location that is now bound to the location field of the event class. Everybody with me so far? Am I going too fast? Okay. Next question says, what annotations should fit the constraints? And so it actually has given us some information. It says this field should not be null or blank. So what annotations are relevant to us? Some of them we've already seen before. Not blank, right? That seems like an obvious one based on the information that we've been given. Not blank. Location is required. What about null? I don't see anything referring to null on here. But we can go take a look at the documentation and see if there's anything referring to null on there, right? These are all of the different annotations that we can use. And here I see one for not null, which seems like it might be a good candidate. Or, actually, if I look up a second, I can see the annotated element must not be null or empty. So actually, not empty seems like it covers both cases, right? Or actually, not blank. Not blank says the annotated element must not be null. Actually, not blank does both cases for me as well. No need to overcomplicate it. Looks like blank covers nulls as well. Yeah. Not empty and not blank look like they do the same thing to me. Oh, yeah, white space. Interesting. Must contain at least one non-white space. So not empty would allow spaces. Not blank would not allow just spaces. That's interesting. Yeah. When's the last time, though, you filled out a form and just hit space a bunch of times in one of the boxes? You should try it. See what happens. If it doesn't work, then, you know, that's kind of what you would expect. If it does work, then you probably see some really weird stuff on the other side. Anyway. Yeah, so not blank, I think, should cover it. And if we go rerun, I think we have everything set up now. We could go rerun this and verify that it does what we want it to do. I'm sorry? Oh, in the constructor. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're correct. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going too fast today. In fact, the exercises probably tell us to error message, and then on the controller. Actually, it doesn't mention the constructor, but I think you are absolutely correct that we should visit the constructor and add it. Ugh. There we go. All right, let's rerun this and give it a try. Takes a second for this to restart itself. All right, and if I go back to the coding events page, and if I refresh this page, hopefully I will see, or if I just click the link again. Oh no, I screwed up. Made a mistake somewhere. Whoops. That's okay. Let's see if we can figure out what happened. Yes, I did not put the accessors in. That's exactly right. Thank you. You're one step ahead of me. I talked about putting accessors in, and then I didn't do it. So that's my fault. Let's do it. You could use IntelliJ to do this. I honestly think it's faster for me to just type it out. Oops. Semicolon. Do we need the setter? I'm not sure that we do, but I'll put it in anyway. Oh, oops. Add the parameter there. All right. Let's try it again. Hopefully that fixes our problem. And if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. Oh, good, it did. So there's the new text box down there at the bottom, and if we want to test it out, we could leave it blank, right? And see what happens. And would it expect, it wouldn't allow us to do this either, right? That's what we were talking about before. If I type in a bunch of spaces, yeah, it says locations required, so that's no good. Got to type in something. Mentor center. There we go. So it worked. You can see there's the event. There's nothing here to indicate that location. So I think one final thing that you might consider doing is adding an additional column onto this table. I'm not going to do that for the sake of time, but it should be fairly straightforward for you all to see how to add an additional column here to display that location data. Let's do one more of these, and then we'll switch over to an enumeration. I want to do one more. I had one in mind, actually. Which one was it? Oh, yeah, it's actually this very next one. Whether an attendee must register for the event or not. Okay? So some events, you don't need to RSVP, you just show up. Other events, you actually have to tell them that you're coming, right? So we want to be able to collect information about, whether they need to RSVP for this event or not. So same questions as before. What should the type and the name of that field be? So what type are we dealing with now? A Boolean, either they have to register or they don't, and for a name, you could call it must register. Okay? Now let's think about our form. How would this be represented on the form? Is it going to be a text box? I think it could be a text box. I also think that seems like overkill. What might be a better thing for our form to check this than a text box? Do you see what I did there? Somebody got it, thank you. A checkbox. Checkbox, I think, would be a good way to represent this on a form. If it's, if it's checked, they have to register. If it's not checked, they don't, right? Checkboxes have an on and off, which is very closely related to a Boolean. So I think that's a natural fit. So let's put in a checkbox on our form. I can go ahead and copy this again, right? But this time, instead of having, come on now. Gotta get more space here on my screen. Let's see. Must register, question mark. We'll change this to say must register. Must register. All right, cool. And actually notice that we're kind of allowing time leaf to specify these things, right? If I run it right now, what's going to happen? Is it going to display the checkbox that I want? What do we think? Let's try it and see. We're not done yet. There's still more coding to do. I just want to see if I can get that checkbox to show up or not. That's what I want to see. Oh, we got an error. So I drove us off a cliff. Let's see if we can figure out what happened. Is it the getters again? Probably. Of course I would make the same mistake twice in a row. That's okay. We can fix that real quick. Boolean get, let's see, must register. That's very not good English. All right, there's the accessors that we need for timely to do its job. Let's try it again. Okay, cool. Must register, and so you see it gave us a text box by default here, and it says false. Woof. Will it work? Yeah. I don't like it though. Does anybody know how I would make this into a text box instead? Yeah, we gotta slap a type on there. We gotta slap a type on here. Type equals check box. I don't think I have to restart just for changing a template. Or do I? Maybe I do. I thought if I just changed the template, I didn't have to restart the whole thing. Apparently I was remembering that incorrectly. Okay, wow, that's a big checkbox. I like it. I didn't intend for it to look exactly like that, but that's okay. Sometimes we'll call that a happy accident, Bob Ross style. That's great. All right, cool. There's our checkbox. So we haven't actually done any validation yet. So the exercise says that we should, for the purposes of validation practice, make this field only able to be marked as true. So they have to check that box. Actually, having checkboxes like this is not unusual. You've all seen them, I'm 100% sure of it. Anytime you install a new program or sign up for a website, right? They give you that 100-page legal garbage that all of us read very thoroughly and then make you check a box at the end to indicate that you've read it. So this kind of stuff does happen. So the question is, what annotation do we need to pull that off? And so, you could look at this list and try to find something that would work. It's not a huge list, or maybe another way of thinking about it is, I know I want it to be true, so let me just type in true here, do a search, and see what shows up, and oh, hey, there it is. Assert true seems like the way to go. Let's add that annotation to our field here. Assert true. And then we can put a message. Must require registration. And we have to import this guy because we haven't used it in this project yet. All right. Restart my app one more time, and I think we'll be in business. I wanted to do this one just to show you an example of something that wasn't a text box, because the prep work did a whole bunch of text boxes. You can validate anything. It doesn't have to be a string. It doesn't. If we had more time, the next one I think was working with integers, right? You can validate any data type that you want to. That's, I think, an important realization. It doesn't have to be strings, although validating strings is probably one of the most common things you're going to do. It doesn't have to be a string to perform validation. So if I go back here now, so if I don't check the box, but I got to fill in everything else, I guess. Or I don't have to, but. So if I don't check the box, it won't let me do it. It says must require registration. So I then check the box and I say, all right, and that time it let me go through, right? That box had to be checked in order for it to pass validation. There is more to this exercise, but I wanted to do some work with enums before we run out of time today. So before I do that, any last questions that you have about the validation stuff that we've done? Once you do it a few times, I think you kind of get the hang of it. They all follow a similar format. Let's switch gears then and do a little bit of enum practice. This exercise is a little bit longer than the last one. I don't think we're going to have time to do the whole thing, but we'll do as much as we can with the time that we've got. So there is a repository about planets. That's why planets were on my brain earlier. I've already got this repository on my computer. If you don't have it, you're welcome to grab it, or if you just want to sit back and watch as I work on this exercise, that's fine with me as well. Don't feel like you have to try and code along with me necessarily, but I've already got this repository loaded up on my computer. It's all ready to go. And then we're going to create an enum called planets. They were even generous enough to give us the names of all the planets because it's Monday after a break, and I totally think I would have forgotten one or two of those probably. Probably Earth. So let's do that. We're going to create a new public enum called planets in the data package. All right. Go find the right package. That's not the right package. Wait, there is no data package. Did I do something wrong?
No,
It's not there. I have to make it. All right. Where do I want to put my data package? Resources? No. Models. Sorry, my brain is still warming up this morning. I want to make sure I get it in the right place. Let me refer back to an existing project just so I make sure I can get it right. It goes in, got it, data. Perfect. Coding events, data. All right, got it. Same package as the controllers. It's not that complicated. All right. Data. Now we're going to create an enum. So if I want to do that, actually you'll notice there's no option for an enum on this list, right? But everything in Java is a class. So enum's included. So I can select a Java class here, and then in the box down below I see there's a option for enum. And we're going to call it planet. Or is it plural? I'm not sure it matters that much. They want it to be called plural, so I'll make it planets plural. All right. And the simplest possible enum that you can make, right, is just a list of words. So Mercury, Venus, Earth. Forgot some commas. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Is that it? Did I skip one? I mean, I know you could argue about this one, but I got them all. Nice. Feels like there should be more, but I don't know. It seems good. So this is the simplest possible enum that you can have, right? This is as simple as it gets. If all I need an enum to do is restrict what values I can have for something, this is good enough. In other words, this would prevent somebody from coming up with some made-up planet and trying to use it, right? This enum would stop them from doing that. If they want to talk about planets in this program, they have to pick from this list. They have to. So if that's all I wanted to do, this enum would be good enough. But enums are capable of much more than that. They can have additional information just like our other classes can, and that's what the rest of this exercise has us doing. So okay, so before we tweak the enum any further, we're going to go to Planet Controller, and we're going to add some planet values to the model and do some stuff with our model. All right, cool. Planet Controller Index Handler. Let's do that. Planet Controller Index Handler. I'm assuming that's what this is because that's the only thing that's here. Model. Got to import that guy. All right. Now we've got some work to do. It wants us to add the planet values to the model. We could make a list. I think there's a couple ways we could do this. We can make it a list and do it that way. Yeah, I'm tempted to make an array list of planets. Gotta import some stuff. I'm not sure how they intended for us to do this part, if they intended us to add all of the planets to the model object one by one. I see it being a little bit more effective to do it this way. Oh my gosh, what is up with my spelling? And I'm not even sure for the purposes of this assignment, this exercise, that we need to do them all. We'll just do a few. Venus, Earth, Mars. All right, we could do all 8 if we wanted to, but this is enough to get the point across, and then we will add planets to our model. This is all basically review, right? The stuff with the model is anyway. It's basically review. The stuff that's maybe a little different is using this enum here. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, right? Everybody with me so far? Anybody have any questions? So then the next step of the exercise is we're going to create a simple template to list out all of the planets. Okay? So did they make a template for it? Oh, they did. They made a starter template for us. We're going to make a list. How do I make a list in HTML? Anybody remember? I'm sorry? OL? OL is for an ordered list. I would have also accepted UL for unordered list. Does it matter in this case? I'm not sure that it really does matter so much in this case. How do I make all the stuff show up on this? How do I make all the planets show up on this list? What do I need to do? So I need an LI. Now I need to do some time leaf magic. How does that work? TH each for a for each. What am I iterating through? Planets is what I called it. I need that in quotes, I think, right? Single quotes? What did I do wrong here? I did something wrong. What am I doing? Oh, I'm sorry? Equals? There we go. That's what I did wrong. Thank you. I had wrong punctuation. I knew it was something syntax. All right, planets. So this should go through and make a new list item for each planet, correct? Anybody disagree with that? So is this going to show Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars? What's it actually going to show us when we run this? Anybody know? We could try it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do next, is boot this up and try it. Anybody know what it's going to show me? Anybody want to guess? The fact that I'm asking you is probably a big clue that it's probably not going to do that, right? What's it going to do instead? Numbers. It's going to do numbers. It's going to do numbers. That's what I expect. Oh, shoot. Really? You got to make me fix this problem again? Every time I start a new project, I have to make sure my Java version is set properly. I wish I knew. I really wish that I knew why it didn't remember that. From the sounds of it, I'm not the only person who's had that problem. I'm sure there's probably a setting buried somewhere in the 100 pages of IntelliJ settings to have it remember that. I don't know where it is. And so far, I've been too lazy. I've been too lazy to look it up, spend more time just switching it every time. It's not the right thing to do. I'm setting a bad example. All right, now let's see if we can go back. Oops, not coding events. That's not gonna work. There is no page there anymore. All right, we still have an error here. Look at all this fun error message. During template parsing, so it's possible that I screwed up a thing. Could not parse as each. Didn't like this. Didn't like this guy. So I'm sure, I mean, obviously I messed this up somehow. I did call it planets, didn't I? What did I call it? Add attribute planets. Where did I go wrong? Did anybody see it? I'm sorry.
I think you need to add something else. Something else besides planets. Isn't it like each planet in planets?
Oh yeah, you're right, you're right. Got it. Yep. You are correct. Why can't I edit my code, please? Like that, right? Except I need the quotes. Come on. Something like that, right? And then, all right. And then, do I need a th value here? Yeah, I think I do too. I skipped a whole piece. Th value would just be equal sign, bracket, planet. Like that? All right, let's try that. It's possible I still screwed something up, but we'll give it a shot. Goodness. It works. It is functional. Well, there we go. Even better than last time. We got nothing. Let's take a look at the source here real quick. I see there's my list. I got nothing. Text. Oh, yeah. I always get that screwed up too. Value is for what? When would you use value? I'm sorry. If you're using forms, then you use value. That specifies what value is going to show up in the text box when you first load the form. Yeah. My computer's running really slowly right now. I blame the air horn. Like, I can't even click on this text right now. Let me stop it. All right. Oops, I meant to refresh this page. Still no good. This was not supposed to be the difficult part of the exercise, and yet somehow I managed to find a way to get it all nice and screwed up. Oh, thank you. Whew. All right. Let's just look at iteration for time leaf, because apparently I forgot how to do it. fine to me. Well, except we have each in text on the same tag, which I'm a little concerned about. I don't know how else we do it though with a list. Oh, and also with an enum, we want to do, what is it, get value? Yeah, what's up?
I don't know if this is causing a problem.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, like that? Oh, capital V. Oh. Oh. Oh, okay. Got rid of this. Okay, let's give it a... That was actually something that was on my, that I was gonna consider, is maybe having a name for it would have been part of the problem there. So this is just gonna grab all the values out of the enum directly, which is a shortcut for this array list business that I was overcomplicating, obviously. Thank you, by the way. I am quite optimistic now that this will do what I intended. There we go, perfect. And it actually gave us the names, interestingly enough, so I was wrong about that too. I'm on fire today. It gave us the names of all the planets, but they're all capsed, which is probably not what we want generally, although maybe it is, I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions about how you like your planet names, I guess. But we finally got the list to display, so that's good. All right, let's get back to the exercise and do some fun stuff with enums, which is what I wanted to spend time talking about. Let's add some additional fields. So having everything spelled out in all caps is not necessarily what we want. Let's do this, let's add a field so that we can get a more human-friendly name for these planets that's not all capsed. So I'm gonna go back to my enum here, and we're gonna add a field. It's a name, so we'll call it a string. Anything else I should include with this field definition here? Final, yeah. Why final? Is the name of Earth going to change? I mean, maybe when the aliens come take it over, they'll decide to call it something else, but as long as we're in charge, I don't expect the names of the planets to be changing. So calling it final is okay. What did I do wrong? I don't need that semicolon doing. Oh, I see. Yeah. And so since what it's complaining about is saying it may not have been initialized because we need a constructor. Now that we have an extra field, we need a constructor for this as well. So let's go ahead and create a constructor, public planets, not plants, planets, string name. This dot name equals name. More syntax problems, fantastic. Hang on. My syntax is all over the place today. Here we go. That seems all right. This is what I wanted. Yeah, semicolon. I had that right. Oh, yeah, of course. Now it's unhappy because we have to actually call the constructor on these enums. That's why. So I just wasn't finished yet. Venus. This is a little tedious. Mars. Jupiter. Saturn. Can you tell that I didn't really code that much over the last couple weeks? Even when you've been coding for many years, such as I have, skipping a few weeks of coding and you get all rusty again. Did you guys notice that over break too? Happens to all of us. I feel like my skills are a little dull today. Getting back into the swing of things. All right. So we've got that. Got the constructor. Why is it unhappy about my constructor? Why is it unhappy about my constructor? Public? Public? What? Private? What? This looks exactly like this example. Or I'm going crazy. Public enum. Am I going nuts? I can make it. Okay. I don't like that. I don't like that. I know I'm being stubborn right now, but. I'm sorry? Yeah.
I don't know
Interesting, yeah. So that's a good piece of feedback for me to pass on to the people running the website. Awesome. Let's get it out of here. That's fine. I mean, having private constructors is a thing, and it actually kind of makes sense for an enum. How do you want people to access your enums? Do you want them to call the constructor on it? No, you want them to say planets.venus, right? That's the proper way to access an enum, not by calling the constructor and creating an instance. We let the enum handle that itself directly. So I don't think having private there is necessary, okay. Fair enough. And so all of this we've been working on to try and make it so that when we run this, we don't have to see, right? We don't have to see the name in all caps. We can see it as a more human-friendly, human-readable name. So if I come here, I can now say planet.name, although I'm going to have to not make the mistake that I've already made twice today and put in getter for the name, which I will do. In order for that to work. And let's try this one more time, since we are running a little short on time here. Let's see if we can get this going. And so now, instead of seeing all caps, hopefully we'll see, yeah, the much nicer formatted. So we're no longer accessing the value of the enumeration directly, we're accessing the name property from each individual enumeration. So we're actually treating the enumeration just like any other Java object now. At this point, the exercise continues along in this vein, has you add an additional property, I think, for the number of days in a year, right? Which would follow a similar process to what we just did. So for the sake of time, I think I'm gonna stop at this point, but does anybody have any questions about enums or anything else that we've talked about today, or anything that was covered in the prep work that we didn't get a chance to talk about today? I'm happy to spend a few moments. If anybody's got anything? No? All right, if there are no questions, then you've got a studio. It's a user sign-up, so a continuation of the user sign-up studio that you did before break, which was a long time ago, I know. take a few moments to refresh your memory on that one if you have to, and then hop into it. And like we usually do, we'll do a review of the studio at about 12:30-ish for the last half hour of class. Okay? Thanks, everybody.